So today I wanted to talk about willingness. We've been going through a nice process at the Abbey, looking at our organizational structure and trying to re-envision what structure would work for us in terms of best suiting our community, our desire to be of benefit to others, and how we can have a structure that best enables us to fulfill the Abbey mission that's captured by our slogan of creating peace in a chaotic world. And so for some of this work, we've been splitting into smaller groups and brainstorming about certain aspects, such as how the different divisions or departments of the Abbey relate to each other and how new members are brought into these divisions or structures or departments. And during one of these activities, one member of my group said something that really caught my attention. And it was something to the effect of, and we come here to the Abbey with an attitude, I'm just willing to do whatever is needed. And so hearing that, I had to ask myself, was that true? And I felt quite deeply that, to be honest, no, it wasn't. And so if you had have asked me that a year and a half ago almost when I got here, I was probably, oh yeah, sure, willing to do whatever's needed. But looking over since last January, it's been interesting to look very honestly and holding myself in a space of compassion whilst doing that, to notice the resistance that has come up and quite clearly a lack of willingness about certain things. And then to ask myself, why? Why is there that resistance? And why has there been that lack of willingness to try and come to some understanding? Yeah. And also because I've been able to see that lack of willingness or resistance has come up when I've even been seen in those situations. So it's not really for any good or logical reason. It's just that I'm coming up against my afflictions and at the edge of my practice with certain things. And so looking at this, I've seen the importance of identifying the filters through which we perceive our daily life, and how in some ways that can restrict what we're able to contribute to the world if we allow these certain filters to guide our actions in ways that are ruled by afflictions. And this is really important because if I'm wanting to exchange myself for others, to really cherish others more than self, to try and generate bodhicitta, then I have to look at these roadblocks that are preventing me from being able to benefit others. And so one of the biggest roadblocks I've noticed coming up against a lack of willingness has been around some erroneous notions about the different value placed on different activities, particularly different offering service tasks. And the Abbey has a really lovely way of incorporating short and long-term guests as well as new residents into the Abbey, just the daily life through the structure, and a large part of that structure is offering service. And so when you just first come in, it's not as if you take on big or even small responsibilities to start off with because you just don't know what's going on. Rather, priority is given especially for young, fit and healthy people to help out with the huge amount of land that we have here and all that is involved with taking care of it. So in terms of building maintenance, gardening, helping with the forest, being a cook's assistant, fruit and veggie processing, all these different types of things. And this is really needed. And in my experience, it seems like it's a never-ending process. There's just lots of work to be done, and this is why we need offering service Saturdays where we have lots of our friends come and help us make some headway with the many projects that we have. But, and this is where I could see my resistance come up quite loudly and clearly, is that I want to be special, I want to be included, and I want to be valued. And I don't think I clearly had these thoughts as the resistance or the lack of willingness come up, but with the value of hindsight, I could see that this was an undertone to why the resistance was coming up, because I think I had these preconceived ideas that certain activities, to be asked to do certain things or to not be asked to do certain activities, was a reflection of my acceptance into the community and some external reflection of my belonging here. So it was interesting that it became quite important that after a while, that I became part of the video team, helping to record and edit and upload the many teachings onto the YouTube channel. And it was an indication that I wasn't just another guest, that I had a place here, that I was valued. Which is funny now, because now the video team has grown to 3, and I'm very thankful that we rotate, we share the responsibilities, and I'm not holding as a bigger piece of the pie as I was just even mid last year. So what have I made of that? I can see that it was just a big warning sign of my own insecurity around inclusion, acceptance, seeking external feedback about my place in the world, as opposed to looking towards my own self-confidence about my own potential and my qualities. And I think a big piece playing into this was also around autonomy, being able to do what I want when I want to, mixed up with pride. And I think a button came up around this, in part in relation to my age and stage, where I kind of come here just, when my previous career was kind of just growing, and I was out on my own, making my own decisions, calling the shots in a way. And so I could see the internal dialogue come up in some situations of, don't tell me what to do, I'm not a child. When I was perceived as being directed in certain ways, and directed is an important word. They're not just asked or explained, but directed. And that's not necessarily where the person was coming from. It's just certain things need to be done a certain way. And for someone who's never done it before, they need to be explained. And so getting to see myself act in what I can now see in an affectionate way, quite childish ways, as been very helpful, and I think is a really big value of coming to live in community, and particularly on embarking on the training process of becoming an anagarika and the pre-monastic training here, and that we get to see the stories that we tell ourselves, the frameworks that we try and fit our experiences into, and the expectations and judgments that we have around people, roles, what it means to be valued or loved. So whether you're in a monastery or not, whether you're here as a guest or as a trainee or as a resident, I think it's really helpful to ask ourselves honestly, what is the filter through which we're perceiving the world? And how does that limit what we're then able to offer to others? And then on top of that, I think looking a bit more deeply is to ask, what is it that I'm really looking for? And are the means that I'm going around trying to get that actually achieving the goals that I'm wanting? Because then I can honestly say that when I first came here, I was looking for community, I was looking for love, and I was looking for connection. And by working within the framework of viewing certain jobs as important, certain jobs as not important, or different things like that, I was not enabling myself to fulfill the needs for love and connection and community. I was just setting myself up to fail. Because I have experienced the isolation and lack of connectedness when I prioritized certain things that I thought was important, as opposed to just joining in with the group where it was needed. And on the flip side, I've experienced the connection, the joy, and the love by just opening myself up and being willing to do whatever is needed, wherever it's needed. Yeah. So I'm glad to have come to some clarity around this, and to have broken down quite considerably, I think, that framework that I first came in here with, about what it means to be loved, valued, and accepted. And I would say that the guests here have been a great teaching, and that they've held up a really valuable mirror to me. Because so often I've had to pause and look and say, wow, look at the enthusiasm, joy, and just open willingness to do whatever is asked. And just to ask myself, where am I with that? From a very kind place. And that gives me ongoing inspiration to open myself up to whatever, whoever, whenever. And most importantly, to engage with the task of it from a place of joy that's just happy that I have the opportunity to be of service and to offer.
Could you clarify a little bit how that filter affects your willingness to do certain jobs, like what you say yes to, what you say no to, how you feel when you say yes or no?
I don't know whether so much would affect my willingness to say yes or no. I think largely I'm too polite for that. I would just do it and resent it while I'm doing it, or be grumpy. I think it comes up with I don't want to be doing this. If I have the framework that that by having being able to do the video editing is more important than joining in with an offering service Saturday. I remember when one of the first offering service Saturdays that were here, I was responsible for editing the Thursday and Friday night teachings, and usually you do that the morning after. And but that was the offering service Saturday, and so I was maybe a bit prideful about having that job, and I wanted to get it done on time and do a good job of it. And so I have to do this. I don't need to take part in the offering service Saturday. I'll do it when I can. So that came up, yeah. Or if I had some things on my to-do list, and there was a request to have a what do they call it, like a swarm on cleaning the Abbey, then I would feel the resistance come up. But I have this to do, particularly if I was the only Anagarika with the other guests. I think that pride would come in, or that framework would kick in, which thankfully I have has not come up for quite a while. But it came up quite a lot at first, because I think as the NVC course that we recently had here was so useful in terms of identifying, what are they called? The close needs, tender needs. The underlying needs that can maybe the reactivity comes off quite quickly. And inclusion, I came to see, was a big one for me, which I hadn't realized. And looking back, I can see that at first not coming to the stand-up meetings, or not knowing what's going on, or people go to their offices and do their work and I'm out here, then I could see that my button for not being included was being pushed. And so then, yeah.